Hey everybody, it's Corona Story Time. I'm Dave. I'm going to read tonight from Life's Too Short to Pretend You're Not Religious by David Dark. This is the start of Chapter 1, Crackers and Grape Juice. Picture an 80s era 17-year-old in horn-rimmed glasses and a maroon vest, sitting in a box office waiting for a late-night movie audience to appear. It could have been The Princess Bride or Top Gun or No Way Out. The responsibility that befell me was to sell tickets, eat popcorn, and talk to customers about the only thing I really wanted to talk about anyway. I asked strangers what their favorite movies were to help them come to a decision, and they'd thank me for sharing my expertise. Conversations never ended quite so beautifully among my peers, but here I'd found my people. But on this particular evening, I'd forgotten something. I knew it was a Sunday and felt bad about having labored on that day. I had an image of my grandfather, a lifelong farmer, reading his newspaper in a rocking chair, attired in his Sunday best till the sun went down, and it seemed permissible to feed the mules. But it wasn't too long since we'd enjoyed an episode of The Dukes of Hazzard together. All was well between us, and the working on a Sunday business was not a big problem. This was something else. At about 1:45, I suddenly realized I was staring down the barrel of having missed, for the first Sunday since my baptism, taking communion, what we call the Lord's Supper, and this was decidedly not okay. Nobody had spelled out such quandaries to me explicitly, but in my head such negligence could potentially constitute a kind of cosmic deal breaker. Baptism, as I understood it, was a one-time deal, and there would be no further cleansing water to erase this particular stain of negligence. There was the lurking feeling that this time around my scarlet-stained soul would not be rendered white as snow. And try as I might, I couldn't get it out of my mind. Feigning calm, I asked a coworker to mind the shop and made for the door. If you had been in Nashville at a nearby Kroger in 1987, you might have witnessed an anxious, wing-tipped young man running up and down the aisles, searching desperately for saltine crackers and Welch's grape juice. Once past the register, I made my way briskly toward the exit and paused in the parking lot to say a quick prayer to the God who, as far as I could tell, appeared to demand these things. I stared at the starry sky above as I wolfed down the crackers and juice with seconds remaining. And I laughed to myself. I'd made it, for now. Do you find this ridiculous, pitiful, horribly sad? I'd like to say that I do too, even as I still feel deep kinship with this confused young person. His ability to find himself ridiculous and to laugh at his own thinking saves the scene, in my view, and renders the situation a little less tragic. When I wonder how a crazed fundamentalist could laugh at himself, I find myself back at the movie theater, that bastion of story and song where so many an epiphany has come to me my whole life long. I wasn't strictly speaking alone in that parking lot. I couldn't help but wonder, for instance, what Steve Martin might make of my passionate performance. And as earnest and afraid as I was, I certainly couldn't deny that my trembling ingestion of juice and crackers would fit perfectly in an episode of my beloved Twilight Zone. And were the crew of the Starship Enterprise to stumble upon an individual on some lonely planet where getting the timing right on such a ritual was ascribed such earth-shattering significance, it seemed to me that Captain Kirk might think it needful one more time to go ahead and violate the Prime Directive for me, for mercy's sake. My bemused laughter, you begin to understand, arose from a certain not at all aloneness I owed to a great cloud of pop culture witnesses surrounding me and affording me more than a few fragments to shore up against my psychological ruin. How might we best characterize the impact of such influences on my troubled mind? Before I attempt to answer this question, I'd like to share a related story. A month or two later, I made my way to a friend's 18th birthday party. His parents were divorced, and the celebration was at his father's place. It was a guys-only affair. We all stood around the kitchen talking about being seniors and applying to colleges while going to work on Doritos and soft drinks. There was a giggle every so often about a special surprise in store for us that evening, and the few who appeared to be in the know would exchange wide-eyed looks before changing the subject to add to the suspense. My friend's father would smile and shake his head. In time, there came a knock at the door. It was opened to reveal a woman in a trench coat, I think smiling. Thanks to a senior English project, I'd been reading Dostoevsky novels all year and was lately in the habit of concluding that I alone, like some sensitive Russian monk, could be expected to hold to the standard of genuine humanness in scenes of tragic degradation. Add to this a certain sanctimoniousness, and you can imagine how bewildered and blindsided I felt at the nearness of an affable woman completely bare but for strategically placed tassels required by Tennessee state law. As perfunctory cheers, whistles, and the forced laughter of my peers anxiously filled every second of awkward silence, I politely declined the offer to place a $5 bill between hip and elastic and negotiated a timely exit. Feeling more than a little estranged from my friends and that I might have failed them in some way, I turned on the tape deck in my mother's Caprice Classic and was greeted by the weird and welcome world of a treasured Tom Waits cassette. To be clear, barreling down the interstate listening to Hang On St. Christopher off Frank's Wild Years did not render the universe or my role within it any less problematic. But it did have me feeling less left out of things and even a tiny bit vindicated. According to my antagonized imagination, a raspy-voiced, world-weary, imaginative man like Waits represented certain otherwise unavailable sympathies. It was as if he'd forgotten more than my rowdy friends would ever know, and he was on my side, worried over the kinds of things that worried me and alive to certain contradictions and hypocrisies I was also determined to be alive to. Perhaps this is the way it works for many of us. At the risk of sounding obsessive, I suspect I'm like a lot of people for whom music is anything but a distraction, a little something to take my mind off things. I wasn't simply amused or entertained by Tom Waits. I was, and I am, in no small way devoted to him. He had me at the raspy hello of a music video in which he came at me as a bleary, strangely contented homeless man in a prop room singing to a mannequin through a bullhorn. I felt beckoned to see my own life and the lives of others differently, called out to see what he's showing, the strange, sideways view of reality he posits, a view in which everything is weirdly connected to everything else. Waits is in the showing business after all, right? I find him completely and utterly convincing. He helps me to get real. I think we'll end it there. Thanks for listening. Have a good night.